Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedom and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Mat Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedom.
What is a worldview? What is a Christian worldview? And what was the worldview of the founders? Hi, I'm Mat Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is David Barton, the president of WallBuilders Ministry. And David, thank you for being with us on Faith and Freedom.
My pleasure, bro. Good to be with you.
You are a walking encyclopedia of the founding era and have many, many thousand original documents, some of those in the original handwriting of the founders. You've studied the founders. What was the worldview of the founders? We hear some of them were deist or atheist. What was the worldview from which they actually participated in the governance and the founding of America?
Probably the easiest way to answer that is to look at some of the least religious founders, or those who are reputed to be the least religious. You take someone like Ben Franklin, and Franklin's one of the few founders I don't think was a Christian. I think he thought he was. Interesting letter, last part of his life, he got a letter from Ezra Stiles, the president of Yale. Franklin was famous all over America, and Ezra Stiles said, we're doing a room at Yale, and we're going to put pictures of a few famous guys in there, and you're one of the famous guys, so can we do a picture of you? And Franklin said, well, I'm done sitting for pictures. I don't want to do any more portraits, but there is a kid coming from Europe. I'll sit for him. If I like the picture, you can have it. Stiles wrote back, said, that's great. And said, by the way, I've never asked you. You and I have been friends for a long time. Where are you with Jesus? And Franklin said, nobody's ever asked me that question before. He said, I've never even thought about it. He said, I guess if I had to think about it, I might say that he's probably not divine, but I don't know. I haven't studied it. So that's really the last word we have on Franklin's faith. That's why I'd say he's probably not Christian. However, I will point you to, for example, the speech that Franklin did at the Constitutional Convention calling for prayer. I love using that speech today with Christians because I read 14 sentences out of that speech to them, and I always ask them, and I just recently did this to several hundred pastors, read it to them, let them see it on the screen, said, how many Bible verses did he just quote? And the most I've ever had, a preacher said 3. Well, he quoted 14 Bible verses in 14 sentences. I go over to the letter of George Washington to the Hebrew congregation at Newport. I read 2 sentences out of the letter. I said, how many Bible verses did he quote? He quoted 9 Bible verses in 2 sentences. I go to Patrick Henry's famous Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death speech. I read their 13 sentences. He quotes 12 Bible verses in 13 sentences. So when you start looking at their rhetoric, the problem we have today is we are so biblically illiterate as a people, we don't recognize the Bible verses anymore. In that day, John Quincy Adams said, with regard to the history contained in the Bible, it's not so much praiseworthy to be acquainted with it as it is shameful to be ignorant of it. In their day, if you didn't know the Bible, you weren't considered educated. In our day, even those who are supposed to know the Bible don't know it near as well as those guys did. So if you take a Franklin, you see the rhetoric that comes out with him. You see that in 1790, just before he died, at that point, Thomas Paine was toying with coming out with the Age of Reason. He sent it to his friend Franklin, and now Paine's about to expose himself as being anti-religious. And when Franklin saw that, he tore the head off Paine. Mm-hmm. He said, you cannot do this. This will destroy things. And Paine went ahead and did it, but Franklin tried to talk him out of it, said, you don't understand how important religion is. You go back to Franklin's earlier days. He got with George Whitefield and said, hey, let's you and I take the Ohio Territory. Let's make a Christian colony out of it because the Indians there only see the French Christians, and that's not a good example of Christianity. We need to show them true Christians. So Franklin, even all the way through, the way he thought, the way he acted, 1785, he's governor of Pennsylvania, and in 1785 he comes up as governor with a statewide plan to raise church attendance in Pennsylvania. So that's a deist founding father, and that's why when people say, oh, they didn't have a biblical worldview, that's not consistent with history.
So let's stay with Franklin for just a minute. The founders, and Franklin was typical of that, they quoted biblical verses, but they didn't actually put the quotations around them.
That's right.
And so when people who are biblically illiterate today, even some so-called scholars, they read the founding fathers, they don't see any quotations from the Bible, but yet they're replete with biblical quotes and references to the Bible.
Yeah, when somebody tells me, and I see this all the time with the Constitution, when somebody says, oh, the Constitution, that's a godless document, I say that just proves to me you're biblically illiterate. You wouldn't recognize a Bible verse if it bit you on the ankle, because I can take them through clause after clause of the Constitution that is quoting scriptural quotes. It's just that because, as you said, they didn't put the references there, people just don't recognize that. And so it is replete with biblical references throughout, not only the Constitution, but their writings and what they did. And that was just typical of that day. The other one that I see thrown around a lot is with George Washington. George Washington and the other founders will say, oh, they use words like divine providence and nature's God, and that proves they were deists. Well, that's modernism. That's saying, hey, we don't do it today, so they didn't do it back then. Because when you look at the Geneva Bible, which that's what the Pilgrims and the Puritans brought, that is their favorite Bible. That is the one that impacted culture. I mean, that's where we get the free market system. That's where we get education. That's where we get the civil rights movement. That's where we get elected forms of government with a written constitution. They point to the Bible for all of that. That Bible uses the word providence 144 times in the Bible. Now, I've checked modern versions. King James uses the word providence once. Now, Geneva came before King James, but modern versions once.
So that was the common vernacular.
That was common vernacular.
So when they're talking about providence, when they say providence, they're talking about God. When we look at it now in modern time, we say providence, we're thinking, well, they're talking about some impersonal, inanimate object.
Well, they were actually talking about God and a process, because providence is defined as the overseeing, superintending care and love of God for us. So when they say
a deist could not accept.
A deist could not accept.
A deist would not understand this providence.
A deist would say, hey,
providence.
He doesn't get involved. He made it, he's gone. Providence says, no, God gets directly involved in the affairs of man because he loves us. And so the word providence is used by George Whitefield, all these evangelical preachers. I mean, if you're going to say using the word providence makes you a deist, then you're saying all the founding preachers were deists. So to look at George Washington and say, oh, he used providence, he must be a deist, that's pure modernism. That means we don't understand their language back then, and we haven't read the Geneva Bible because it's all over that Bible.
So for Benjamin Franklin, he might not have been a Christian in the sense that he had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ or understood that he was the atoning sacrifice and the divine Son of God. But on the other hand, he did reference God, and it was his speech at the Constitutional Convention where he invoked God and asked that they begin from henceforth convening every meeting with prayer.
Yeah, he invoked, he promoted. You look at him, what he did as a printer, he was so aggressive in printing theological works and printing things like even the New England Primer to have for kids, which is nothing but a hardcore theological Christian book. I mean, that was his thinking. And again, I think he thought he was a Christian, so somebody finally asked him. I don't think it ever crossed his mind that he wasn't. And I think he probably still would say, I'm a Christian, even though he questioned the divinity of Christ. And we would say, well, that's a line you've gone too far. But there's nothing in him that is anti-religious or anti-biblical in the sense of behavior or worldview or thinking, except that aspect of the divinity of Christ.
And so even within his writings, who would be the least of the Founding Fathers in terms of faith, in terms of Christian faith, you have this permeation of a Judeo-Christian worldview. The Scriptures permeate his understanding of the world, the role of government, the relationship of government to man, and our relationship to God himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody wants to have fun, if you think you know the Bible, you need to take some of Franklin's works and go back and check all the Bible verses, because you'll learn the Bible as you go through. Because he, again, like that speech at the Constitutional Convention, 14 Bible verses and 14 sentences. I mean, the problem is most Christians today do not recognize that.
And most theologians wouldn't be able to do that.
No,
most Christians wouldn't be able to just off the top of their head write 14 sentences and have each sentence reflect a scriptural principle or verse.
No, that's right. And as a matter of fact, one of the critics of the Founding Fathers, there's a book out by some Christian seminary professors, and they said, oh, these guys could not have been Christian because, like, when they had kids in classrooms, they didn't give altar calls in the classrooms. I thought, that's your standard for biblical? And I thought, if I were to go to your class, I bet you don't give altar calls in all your classrooms. And if that's the standard for what it takes to be a Christian, then I don't think you guys are. So we use artificial standards, but when you go back to what they actually did and how they thought, it is a biblical worldview.
Well, our guest is David Barton, the president and founder of WallBuilders Ministry. I encourage you to order this book. This is one of my favorite books that David has written. He's written very many books and resources, but this book, Original Intent by David Barton, we can make that available to you for a contribution of $15 plus shipping and handling to Liberty Counsel. This is a great book. It goes over the Founding Fathers. If you want to underline the things that you want, probably underline the things that you don't want to go back and read, because what I did, I began to underline this book and found out I underlined almost every sentence in the book. It is chock full of information, citing original sources as well. This is another one, The Lives of the Signers of the Declaration of Independence, another book by David Barton from WallBuilders Ministry. And finally, the book, a reprint of the New England Primer. You can get all of these by going to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org. That's lc.org. And also encourage you to visit WallBuilders' website as well. Find out more about the Founding Fathers, our Judeo-Christian worldview, and how it influenced government then and how it should shape our society today.
You have been listening to Faith and Freedom with Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedom. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.